We're back with top 8 of the Hong Kong Master Ball League. And on the left, we have Tang Junho Oscar. And on the right, we have Ansari Rafi Ahmed. So, on the left, Zamazenta activates its Dauntless Shield, and Raging Bolts activates its Photosynthesis ability. So right now, the Zamazenta has to. It's threatened by the Chiyu, which is Choice Scarf on Ahmed's side. Right. But Ahmed could pin the Zamazenta with a potential Moonblast as well. We see Zamazenta go for the body press into Chiyu, and we see the Raging Bolt going for the Thunderclap onto the Lunella to break its potential, to break its Shadow Shield. And as we can see, the first realization of the game comes from Oscar, terrorizing the Zamazenta into Dragon to resist Chiyu's powerful fire type attacks. Raging Bolt uses Thunderclap, but it doesn't do enough. It does nothing. And Chiyu's overheats does around 1/3 of Zamazenta's HP just by being resisted. Zamazenta goes for the body press onto the Chiyu, and this Lunala is going for a support move as Thunderclap didn't work. And Lunella goes for Trick Room. Trick Room, which is a very good indicator of what Ahmed has in the back. And Ahmed sends out Brute's Bonnets, which can put Raging Bolts and Zamazenta to sleep. So right now, we have Oscar contemplating about his play right now. Obviously, Oscar could use Double Protect to start a turn of Trick Room. However, Oscar could also go on the aggressive and make a read of what Brute Bonnets is going to sport into. And Oscar actually just opting to double protect. And we see on Ahmed's side, Brute's Bonnet terrestrializes into the water type, which means that it is now how going to be hit by Raging Bolt's super effective electric type attacks. We see Raging Bolts go first before the Zamazenta in Trick Room, as both of Oscar's Pokemon go for protects. And Brute's Bonnet spores into the Raging Bolts. As Ahmed knows that he wants to go for the Spore, and Lunala goes for the Meteor Beam, increasing its special attack by 1 stage. However, it whiffs because both of Oscar's Pokemon went for Protect. Right now, his Lunala has Shadow Shield active and is threatening big damage, and Brute's Bonnet is threatening Spore into Oscar's Pokemon. Oscar needs to survive the Trick Room in order to win the set. In order to win the set. And Ahmed is putting on a lot of pressure with +1 Lunala and more pressure from the Brute's Bonnet, which goes into the Raging Bolts here. And Raging Bolts takes its mandatory turn of sleep. Lunala goes for Moongeist Beam, and it hits into the Zamazenta, which brings it down to red, but Zamazenta is able to use Behemoth Mash to break Lunala's Shadow Shield. Zamazenta opts to go for Protect again, and Raging Bolts might as well just go for. Zenta opts to go for to Protect. And you see Oscar contemplating if he wants to go for the Thunderbolt on Brute's Bonnet, because he might as well, right? There is a chance that Brute Bonnet does. Okay, never mind. So we see Ahmed switching out Brute Bonnet for Koraidon, intending to stop the last turn of Trick Room, and Koraidon's Orichalcum Pulse summons her son, and also boosts Koraidon's attack by 1/3. Zamazenta goes for Protect, and Raging Bolt actually wakes up after one turn sleep, which is a 1 out of 3 chance, and Thunderbolt does around 25% into Koraidon. Moongeist Beam goes into the Raging Bolt, which does 75%. This Lunala is so threatening right now, and Lunala is so threatening right now, but so is Life Orb Koraidon on Ahmed's side of the field. However, what Ahmed needs to do is to just click Protect on Koraidon in order to be the fastest thing on the field next turn. Sure. But the thing about Life Orb Koraidon is that it's a damage trade bot, and it kind of nukes itself if Flint was in Life Orb recoil. And we see Oscar going for the switch on Zamazenta, forfeiting its defense boost in order to or better board position. We see Tornadoes being switched in. And we see Ahmed switching out the Koraidon, baiting a potential Draco Meteor into it. And we see Brute Bonnet return on the field, activating Photosynthesis defense, actually. And we see Raging Bolt go for Photosynthesis boosted Thunderbolt, and it does a decent amount to Lunala, but Lunala does knock out the Raging Bolts here with Moongeist Beam. But Tornadus has speed control, and Tornadus can go for Tailwind and go for speed control, and this Catter Shadow Rider is so threatening into the Lunala and the Brute Bonnets. As a reminder, this Catter Shadow Rider is the Focus Sash variant. It's the Focus Sash variant, and the thing about Focus Sash is that it's able to survive a Sucker Punch from the Brute Bonnets, and the Lunala goes for Wide Guard, protecting itself from the 4x super effective, and its teammate from the 4x super effective Astro Barrage coming out from this his Counter Shadow Rider, and we see the Tornades actually opt to taunt the Brute's Bonnets. But the Brute Bonnet doesn't fall for it and go for Spore. It actually went for Seed Bomb instead to break the Sash on Counter Shadow Rider and also play around the Encore. If Encore fails into the Brute's Bonnet, if Sucker Punch fails, then Counter Shadow Rider could just lock it into the move, and Brute Bonnet is stuck on the field doing nothing for a couple turns. So that's a very smart play from Oscar because it shuts down Spore, and Counter Shadow Rider can afford to do so because it's Focus Sash. We see a Brute Bonnet go for the Sucker Punch when it fails, and Tornadus going for the taunt, and the Counter Shadow Rider going for the Encore, which means that Lunala is going to be unable to use White Guard for the next couple of turns, and it's locked into it, which means that Lunala is going to struggle. Lunala is going to struggle, and we see a Tornadus go for the Bleak Windstorm, and we see Oscar taking his opportunity to reposition by switching out Calyrex and dealing some chip damage with the Bleak Windstorm on Tornadus. If Ahmed switches the Lunala out, then Koraidon is forced to take a Bleak Windstorm, which it does not really want to take because Koraidon is relatively fair restricted. We see the Cataracte Shadow Rider switch out to Zamazenta, and we see the Tornadus go for Bleak Windstorm. And Lunala goes for struggle and knocks itself out with struggle recoil, which always does a quarter of our Pokemon's HP. And Brute's Bonnet Seed Bomb launches to Zamazenta. So right now, this is a game where it might come down to Bleak Storm potentially hitting, potentially missing. You see your sun return to normal, and Brute Bonnet's photosynthesis being deactivated, and Taunt wears off on Brute Bonnets. So right now, Tailwind is still active on Oscar's side of the field. Does Ahmed go for the Sucker Punch? And does Oscar read into it? And will Bleakwind Storm miss? Oscar has to connect Bleakwind Storm in order to win the set. But Oscar is contemplating if he wants to go for Rain Dance or Taunts in order to shut down Rain Dance. So Rain Dance could shut down Koraidon's or Calcum Pulse, and its fire type attacks become much weaker. And also, Taunt shuts down Rude Bonnets. So we see Cat or Shadow Rider go for Protect, and Tornadus goes for the Rain Dance, which shuts down the photosynthesis coming from the Brute Bonnets. And the Brute's Bonnets goes for the Sucker Punch, and Koraidon goes for the Flame Charge, but it doesn't. But it does very little damage due to the rain. Right? And Tornadus' Bleakwind Storm is now 100% accurate, so it does not come down to if it will connect or not. Tornadus' Bleakwind Storm is guaranteed to hit both Pokemon, and Counter Shadow Rider could go for Encore onto the Brute's Bonnets, which means that it's forced to go for Sucker Punch again and again. As Tornadus goes for a Bleakwind Storm, and Corona protects itself, and Brute's Bonnets actually takes around 20% from Bleakwind Storm because it's so bulky, and gets a speed drop on Brute Bonnets, which is not that relevant, actually. You see the Koraidon going for Protect, but that also means that it's might get Encore locked, and right now, Oscar is so dumb. It's playing this endgame so perfectly. Encore into the Koraidon means that the Koraidon, the Brute's Bonnet Sucker Punch cannot KO the Cataract Shadow Rider, and the Koraidon cannot do anything. You see our Brute Bonnet goes for a Sucker Punch onto the Tornadus. Tornadus actually taking a decent chunk. And Koraidon goes for a Collision Course into the Tornadus. But Tornadus barely survives on a slither of HP. As Cataract Shadow Rider goes for the Encore. And Tornadus' Bleakwind Storm connects onto both Pokemon. So right now, right we know that Koraidon is locked in the Collision Course, which Counter Shadow Rider is immune to. But Counter Shadow Rider is also threatened by Sucker Punch, and so is Tornadus. So is Tornadus. I don't think this endgame is winnable anymore. For Oscar, but there is a chance. And Oscar actually opting to attack with the Counter Shadow Rider, and Sucker Punch connects. However, there's still a chance. And a Nerf actually gets off the field, which means that Brute Bonnet gets to eat a Citrus Berry. The Koraidon is faster than Tornadus and Tailwind and goes for he collision course, and Tornadus faints, and Ahmed takes this game 1 of top 8. We're moving on to game 2 of the series, and we see Zamazenta Donald's shield increases defense by 1 stage. However, the lead is still in this. Both sides have switched up their lead, this time leading Lunala Fluttermane, and Oscar opting to go Zamazenta Tornadus. Zamazenta Tornadus does cover for the Corydon Fluttermane, a potential Corydon Fluttermane adjustment, and does provide speed control. Tornadus' taunt could shut down Lunala from going for the Trick Room, and also Wide Guard, which means that the Tornadus is free to go for a Tailwind later on. But at the same time, this Tornadus is being threatened by a Meteor Beam from this Lunala. And we see that Ahmed switches out onto Fluttermane and brings in their Chiyu, predicting a Behemoth Mash from this Zamazenta. Tornadus goes for the taunts onto the Lunala. And we see Zamazenta's Behemoth Mash does some chip into Chiyu. And Lunala goes for the Meteor Beam. Meteor Beam has a 10% chance to miss, but if it connects, it's going to KO this Tornadus. And it connects. So this Tornadus is not being able to it's unable to withstand the power of +1 super effective Beads of Ruin boosted Meteor Beam. But right now, Cataract Shadow Rider is free to switch in and go for the Beads of Ruin boosted Astral Barrage. But the thing is that if Ahmed wants to go for Snarl, then he has to play around the Zamazenta going for Wide Guard. And Oscar is actually being threatened so much here too. Oscar actually opts to go for the safe play of double protecting to see what his Choice Scarf Chiyu locks into, so that he can make a more informed decision later. So if the Chiyu does go pretty protect. Okay, so we see the Terrazization come out, and Lunala is now a fairy type, which means that it's going to get hit super effectively by Behemoth Dash. It's going to avoid the 4x super effective weakness from the Astral Barrage. We see both of Oscar's Pokemon go for the Protects, and the next Pokemon to move is Chiyu because it's Choice Scarf, and Chiyu goes for the Overheat onto the Zamazenta, which means that Oscar might go for the Hero Dragon. And we see Ahmed going for the double into the Zamazenta and wanting to get rid of it. And wanting to get rid of it. And, we see Oscar lock into the body press on her Chiyu, but now both Pokemon are susceptible to a double up. Last game, we see Raging Bolts in her back, but last game we saw that Raging Bolts took 75% from a +1 Moongeist Beam from Lunala, but with Chiyu on her field, is not going to take it. I don't think it's going to take it. We see Cataracts being switched out. Into the Raging Bolts. So right now, the Overheat to break Focus Sash, and the Moongeist on the Shadow Rider, and the potential Moongeist Beam is going to knock out this Cataract Shadow Rider. And Oscar goes for the Terra Dragon onto the Zamazenta. And the Chiyu goes for the Overheat onto the Raging Bolt, which does half of Raging Bolt's HP, which just proves how strong Chiyu is as a Pokemon. Zamazenta's Behemoth Bash does a good amount of damage into the Lunala, and we see the Moongeist Beam go into the Raging Bolt and knocking it out. But right now, we have -2 Chiyu. And, Lunala that doesn't want to take a shadow. That doesn't want to take another Behemoth Ash versus a Terra Dragon, Zamazenta, and a Focus Ash and Cataract Shadow Rider, which is being boosted by the Beads of Ruin. Beads of Ruin. And right now, Oscar actually locks into Behemoth Bash and Astro Barrage, but there is a chance that just Lunala does go for the white part here. We see the Chiyu switch into Fluttermane, predicting a switch from here. And Lunala does go for the wide guard, which means that the Astral Barrage that the Cataracts used doesn't break the Fluttermane's Focus Sash. And Lunala does protect itself, which means that Lunala has a chance to live this Behemoth Bash, but the Zamazenta is so powerful that the Lunala is going to faint from this, due to it. From this. With the switch being Fluttermane, I believe the last Pokemon on Ahmed's field might be Koraidon. Might be Koraidon. And if it is Koraidon, it activates the booster speed of the Fluttermane. Which means that the Fluttermane has a pretty safe Moonblast into the Zamazenta. And Fluttermane is guaranteed to survive one attack from these two powerful restricted Pokemon due to it having the Focus Sash height. We see both players really thinking about their next move. As the Zamazenta decides to wide guard, and we see Caviar Shadow Rider. We see the potential wide guard from Oscar, which really means that he's covering for Icy Wind Flare Blitz play here. We see the Koraidon switch into the Chiyu. And Beads of Ruin is going to be active. Active once again. Zamazenta goes when he protects. And Fluttermane's Icy Wind connects into the Calyrex, and Calyrex is going to get a speed drop, which means that Koraidon is now faster than it. So Calyrex Shadow Rider goes for the Astral Barrage, and it's going to bring Fluttermane down its Focus Sash, and it's going to bring Chiyu to their yellow HP. And what this means is that Chiyu could safely Dark Pulse into the Calyrex Shadow Rider, or if Ahmed wants to make a read, Snarl, or even attacking the Zamazenta. As the Zamazenta just protected, Fluttermane and Chiyu could double into Zamazenta, reading into the Calyrex Shadow Rider protecting. And Flare Blitz from Koraidon is going to clean up for Ahmed in the back here. So Oscar really is in a dilemma. We see Oscar really thinking about this turn. As he opts to go for Protect and Behemoth Mash. But this Zamazenta is going to take a Beads of Ruin boosted Moonblast, which brings it down to red. Do we see the attack into it? No, her Chiyu goes for Dark Pulse into the Calyrex, but the Zamazenta used Behemoth Dash into the Fluttermane instead of their Chiyu, which means our Chiyu is free to go for it again, and Koraidon is naturally faster than Zamazenta, and Koraidon's Collision Course is going to be able to pick up this low HP Zamazenta, and this Chiyu is going to pick up a KO on on a not very effective Terra is going to take. We see Oscar attempting to go for the double protect, hoping that Ahmed messes up, and Chi, whose Dark Pulse hits into the Cataract Shadow Rider 4 times more effective because it has this, and knocks it out because it's a sash broken. And Koraidon's Collision Course hits into the Hizamazenta, which means that Ahmed wins her Series 2-0 and advances to top 4 of the Hong Kong Master Ball League.